In just 4 minutes, one HMRC document destroyed Britain's most powerful working-class politician. I've covered 298 PMQ sessions. I've witnessed career assassinations, scandal exposures, political demolitions, but what happened at 12:34 p.m. on November 14th wasn't just theater. It was systematic demolition of Angela Rayner by a woman who had built an airtight tax evasion case, exposing the biggest working-class betrayal in British politics. Kemi Badenoch walked to the dispatch box, carrying a sealed Treasury briefcase. She looked like a tax prosecutor who had gathered evidence to destroy a criminal enterprise built on hypocrisy. What none of us knew was that briefcase contained tax documents exposing £47,000 in capital gains tax evasion by the woman who claimed to champion working-class values. But she didn't open it immediately. The silence before destruction was electric. The Commons went quiet, not respectful courtesy, but deadly silence, when everyone senses a political career ending. At 12:33 p.m., Rayner's private secretary received an urgent message. I watched her face pale as she whispered something frantic to the deputy PM. Rayner's confidence visibly wavered. Her housing advisor was frantically checking his tablet. He looked like someone who knew 7 years of working-class authenticity was about to be exposed as Labour's biggest fraud. And then Badenoch opened her briefcase. "Deputy Prime Minister," she began, her voice carrying authority that commanded attention. "I want to discuss housing policy and concerning tax arrangements brought to my attention through HMRC cooperation." Standard opening. Nothing threatening. Rayner looked relieved, defiant. Her media team were preparing standard responses about conservative attacks. But Badenoch's briefcase was positioned precisely, open to a tab with HMRC and land registry seals. This wasn't routine questioning. This was systematic prosecution. Prime Minister Rayner replied in her Stockport accent, "This government remains committed to delivering affordable housing for working families, unlike the Conservative housing failure record." Perfect deflection. But Badenoch wasn't interested in housing debates. I could see her building towards something devastating, like a tax investigator with documents to destroy fraudulent claims. "Deputy Prime Minister," she said, removing a document with precision, "are you familiar with a property transaction involving 18 Lowndes Lane, Stockport, completed on January 15th? The question hit the chamber like financial dynamite. Rayner's expression didn't change immediately, but I watched her hands. They went completely rigid. When politicians' hands stop moving during tax discussions, it means their survival instincts have activated. "Prime Minister," Rayner replied, her voice maintaining bravado but lacking confidence, "I have bought and sold properties, like millions of working families, all in accordance with legal requirements." Wrong answer. Catastrophically wrong. When asked about a specific property with a specific date, generic answers suggest massive cover-up. Badenoch pulled out a second document with HMRC investigation stamps and land registry seals, visible to cameras. "Deputy Prime Minister," she continued, gaining momentum, "according to these HMRC documents obtained through parliamentary privilege, you purchased 18 Lowndes Lane for £79,000 in 2015 under right to buy, while claiming it as your primary residence." A shockwave rippled through observers. Right to buy was sacred to working-class voters. But Badenoch was just beginning her systematic demolition of Rayner's credentials. "And Deputy Prime Minister," she said, producing a third document, "these HMRC files show you sold this property in 2021 for £127,500. The chamber fell silent. Not courtesy. This was MPs processing information that could destroy careers and trigger criminal investigations. Rayner's advisor leaned forward, his training inadequate for criminal allegations. Her media handler stopped checking her phone, staring with car crash shock. But what happened next changed everything. Rayner shot forward, her defiance evaporating. "Prime Minister, these allegations represent serious misunderstanding of legitimate housing arrangements." Deputy Prime Minister Badenoch interrupted, Cutting through the protest, are you denying that you failed to pay £47,000 in capital gains tax while claiming to fight for working families who pay their taxes? Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. For exactly 14 seconds, I counted. Rayner said nothing. 14 seconds might not sound significant, but in high-stakes PMQs, 14 seconds equals admission of guilt. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed completely. The confident deputy PM was gone, replaced by panic with a Stockport accent. I have always followed tax advice from qualified professionals. I cannot comment on specific financial arrangements that may be subject to ongoing HMRC review. Devastating response. When a deputy prime minister says, I cannot comment about £47,000 in unpaid taxes while claiming to champion working families, it doesn't sound like innocence. It sounds like systematic tax fraud. Badenoch opened her briefcase one final time and removed what would become the smoking gun that ended Rayner's working-class political career forever. Deputy Prime Minister, she said, her voice now carrying absolute authority over the entire chamber. Perhaps this will help clarify your tax arrangements. She placed a photograph on the dispatch box, positioning it for every camera. The image showed Rayner at a Labour fundraiser, celebrating with champagne, while a caption read, Angela's property portfolio success story. This photograph was taken at a Stockport Labour event on March 18, 2022, 3 months after you sold the Lowndes Lane property without paying capital gains tax. The same event where you spoke about making the wealthy pay their fair share. The timing was devastating. Same period, same location, same hypocrisy. This wasn't working-class authenticity. This was documented tax evasion by someone who publicly demanded higher taxes on property gains while secretly avoiding them. I watched Rayner's face drain of color. Her hands were now visibly shaking, not parliamentary nervousness. Actual trembling, clearly visible to every camera. In the press gallery, her media team was typing frantically on secure communications, sending emergency damage control instructions to every Labour office and trade union headquarters. But Badenoch wasn't finished demolishing her. Deputy Prime Minister, she continued, producing another document with HMRC seals. I also have internal correspondence showing HMRC flagged your property transactions for potential fraud investigation in September 2023, 8 months before you became Deputy PM. At 12:38 p.m., exactly 4 minutes after she'd begun speaking, Angela Rayner experienced complete working-class political breakdown. Her voice was barely audible through parliamentary microphones. Prime Minister, these documents lack proper context. Property transactions require complex legal arrangements. She stopped mid-sentence. 17 seconds of silence. I've never seen a deputy prime minister unable to complete a sentence during PMQs. The silence was broken by Badenoch's calm, measured response. Deputy Prime Minister, I'm not questioning complex legal arrangements. I'm questioning £47,000 in unpaid capital gains tax by someone who demands working families pay higher taxes while secretly evading them herself. The accusation hung in the chamber like political poison. This wasn't just about property taxes anymore. This was about systematic betrayal of working-class values by their supposed champion who had secretly enriched herself through tax avoidance while demanding higher taxes on everyone else. Rayner's housing advisor was whispering urgently in her ear, but even he seemed to recognize that standard political damage control was inadequate for tax fraud allegations of this magnitude. Furthermore, Badenoch continued, opening her final folder, HMRC analysis confirms that your property transactions follow a pattern of systematic capital gains tax avoidance spanning 7 years and involving at least 3 additional properties. The expansion from one property to systematic tax avoidance demonstrated that this wasn't an isolated mistake. This was criminal enterprise designed to enrich a working-class politician while her constituents paid full tax rates on their modest property gains. At 12:39 p.m., Rayner made the decision that effectively ended her working-class political credibility forever. We will need to review these allegations with our legal teams and provide appropriate responses through established parliamentary procedures. Wrong answer. Politically fatal. When you're accused of systematic tax evasion while championing higher taxes, you don't promise to review allegations, you categorically deny the accusations or admit guilt. Promising legal review sounds like you're buying time to hide evidence. The chamber erupted in chaos. Conservative MPs shouted resign and tax cheat. Labour backbenchers stared at phones, reading urgent messages from party headquarters. Some quietly left the chamber strategic retreat from a sinking colleague. In the press gallery, correspondents typed frantically. The BBC's Westminster editor spoke urgently. This could end Rayner's career. We're watching Labour's working-class authenticity collapse in real time. As PMQs concluded, I overheard conversations confirming everyone's thoughts. She's finished. HMRC investigation within hours. Working-class voters will never forgive this. The £47,000 tax evasion scandal wasn't just about property transactions. It was about a working-class champion who had systematically betrayed her supporters by avoiding the very taxes she demanded they pay while claiming to fight for their interests. By 2:30 p.m., Jen Rayner tax scandal was trending. By 3:15 p.m., HMRC confirmed accelerated investigations. By 4:07 p.m., 17 Labour MPs called for Rayner's resignation. Every major channel ran wall-to-wall Housegate coverage, exposing the Deputy PM as a tax-avoiding hypocrite who betrayed working-class values for profit. And it all started with one Treasury briefcase, carried by a woman who had spent months building an unbreakable case against Labour's most prominent working-class politician. What I witnessed wasn't just procedure. It was the moment when tax evidence obliterated political authenticity, when documented fraud defeated working-class theater, and when forensic preparation destroyed class-based identity. PMQs continued 20 minutes longer, but everyone knew the outcome. Rayner's credibility as working-class champion was finished. Her authority as Deputy PM was destroyed. Labour's authenticity had shifted away from tax-avoiding politicians. Sometimes political justice takes years through HMRC investigations. Sometimes it takes 4 minutes in the Commons. On November 14th, I watched Kemi Badenoch prove that in British politics, documented evidence always defeats class-based performance. The only question was how much damage Labour's tax hypocrisy would do to working-class trust before the truth finished destroying Rayner's career. If this exposure of working-class betrayal restored your faith in political accountability, don't just watch, like, share, and subscribe to our channel, where tax scandals get exposed and political lies get prosecuted, no matter which accent they hide behind. Hit the bell. The next tax fraud might involve your MP. What would you do if you discovered your working-class champion had been avoiding the very taxes she demanded you pay? Drop a comment below. This analysis is based on parliamentary proceedings and HMRC tax documentation. All dialogue and specific details are dramatized for educational and commentary purposes.